Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 25 of B-Road Ballers, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of hot hatches. And some of the cars that we review in these series are cars which are not the kind of thing that would come to mind first in their respective categories, vehicles which are easily overlooked, easily forgotten, understated, sleepers, and sometimes fantastic cars. And I would say this is one of those occasions. It's the 1979 Autobianchi, or Fiat in effect, A112 Abarth. Now this is based, as I alluded to, on a Fiat model, I believe, and it's your typical classic Italian hatch. Ultra small, pretty good looking for its age and for its class, and has naturally good handling, almost like an Italian K car, although obviously it's not deliberately restricted in terms of the law as far as I'm aware, like Japanese K cars are, but just because Italy favours vehicles like this, it's practical. This though is the performance model. Think of it as like the Fiat 500 Abarth or the Grande Punto Abarth of 30-40 years ago. And as such, it's all about making the most of small numbers. Or so you'd think, because in some ways the numbers on this car are actually more impressive than you'd expect. It's a car which is very, very rarely used by most people, not just on GT6, but on the Gran Turismo series in general. This is a car which I have to admit I don't use a huge amount, but it's one of those cars which is good to bear in mind, not necessarily to use all the time, but an interesting alternative to especially smaller hot hatches. Now, right from the outset, this car is never going to take on Ford Focus STs or Meganes or Golf Rs around the track. It's just not capable of that, of course. But if you're going up against tiny hot hatches, such as, say, the Clio Sport, or more so in the K car category, the Daihatsu Core, the Suzuki Alto, those kind of vehicles, ultra small hot hatches, the Volkswagen Lupo as well, vehicles like that, this is actually a perfect alternative to those more obvious choices. And the reason why is because, as I alluded to just now, it produces far more spec than you'd think. It's powered by a turbocharged 1.1 litre engine. It's front-wheel drive, as you'd probably expect. But that 1.1 litre engine, despite its age, can put out 227 horsepower, which I find pretty impressive, to be completely honest. It also puts out a pretty decent 157 pound-feet of torque, and only weighs 622 kilos, which again is very good, but slightly more expected for a car like this. As far as horsepower per tonne, it puts out a pretty decent 365. Not class leading, of course, but good nonetheless. The PP is surprisingly high, 511 PP for this car. To put that into perspective, that's significantly higher, I believe if I remember correctly, around 20 or 30 PP higher than most other vehicles in its category. That's higher than the Daihatsu Core, if I remember correctly, and that's significantly higher than many of the other K cars, or many of the K cars in the game. It's not the cheapest of hot hatches, to be completely honest. It's a 36 grand car, but I would actually say it's worth that. It's got that kind of collector's appeal. It's not an obvious choice of hot hatch. It's more quirky, more oddball. It is a classic, and although it's not a premium, it's still a pretty nice car to have in your collection. If you're looking to buy it, it's not in the Fiat or Abarth dealers. It is in its own dealership, Autobianchi. And I think this is a great little car. I'm not saying it's the best hot hatch in the game or anything like that, of course, but it's a great little alternative to those more obvious choices. Now, the handling, I would say, is very unique on this car. It's good, as you'd expect from such a small car, but I would describe it in a very particular way. I would say that the handling on this car is only good because it's this car. If the handling on this car were projected onto a bigger vehicle, it would be bad handling. But the handling that this car has is good because of its size. And what I mean by that is it's actually pretty heavy. There's quite a lot of understeer on this car. Now, you kind of expect that on a front-wheel drive, but many front-wheel drives, especially small ones, handle extremely well. They're very loose. They can turn in like monsters on tight corners. This car can do that, but it is heavier than you'd expect. But because the car is still so small, it still works out to have very good handling, which is why I said if it was a bigger car, it would technically be bad handling. But because of how tiny it is, it feels very good. The handling is kind of like a tiny touring car or a cup car. And although the top-end performance is not that strong, it only does around 150, 160 comfortably, the acceleration is pretty good low-end, and primarily against tiny hot hatches, it's a superb choice to go for. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.